I think what your viewers have to understand is that every winter, a number of energy suppliers exit the market. They leave because they can't maintain their financial position. This year, the wholesale prices are going up very high. So the price at which they get gas is much higher. And of course, that puts more pressure on them. And that's why a number of these companies are saying that we should, some of them are saying we should lift the price cap. Some of them are saying that we should perhaps bail them out. And I've been very focused on three principles. I think firstly, we've got to look after customers. We've got to make sure there's a continuity of supply. And we've got to look after the most vulnerable and particularly elderly customers. That's my first priority. The second thing I've said is that I don't think we should be throwing taxpayers' money at companies which have been, let's face it, badly run. A number of these companies have been badly run. As I say, every year, between 5 and 8 companies exit the market. And I don't want to prop up failing companies. I don't want there to be a reward for failure. I don't think the taxpayer should be propping those up. And then the third principle is that, as you said in your header, the energy price cap is here to stay. I don't want to remove that. I don't want to go back to the old days where a very, very small number of companies were essentially pushing up prices and extorting lots of value from customers who had no choice.
Problem is that price cap policies can't cope with extremes, can they? That's the main issue. And it's a mistaken intervention, some would say, by a Conservative government to cap prices.
Yeah, that is an argument. But what we had before, only a few years ago, was a market where you had a very small number of companies that were charging very, very high prices. And that's why we brought in the price cap. And what the price cap has done is actually forced companies to innovate. There have been lots of new entrants, as we've seen. And now we're at a point where some of those new entrants are feeling the pressure, and some of them, it may well be, have not been managed properly.
State-backed loans is an option?
There are lots of options. I mean, currently at the moment, and it's important people understand this, we have mechanisms in place. So there's a thing called SOLAR, which stands for the supplier of last resort, which means that if your energy company goes bust, the customers from that company will go to another company which can absorb the number of customers. These structures are already there. The issue this year, as you know, is that there may be more than the usual 5 to 8.
Cards, couldn't
it won't be a house of cards, but there'll be more than 5 to 8. There could be more than 5 to 8. It's not happened yet. There could be more than 5 to 8 the usual companies that exit. And we have to have a much more robust supply of last resort.
How many are you scheduled for? What's your worst-case scenario on the number of companies that might
I'm not
go
going
under?
to put a number on that. As I say, most years, I mean, I've been energy minister for this is my third year, third winter. 5 to 8 is generally what we've observed. And it could be worse than that, but I can't tell you the exact number.
So what's going to happen to all of those customers?
The customers, and this is my first principle, will have complete continuity of supply. So we will find energy suppliers. There will be energy suppliers for those customers, and that's what the supplier of last resort, the mechanism we already have in place, that's what it means.
Which is why you need to look to state-backed loans for some of those bigger companies to support those who are taking on extra customers.
Yeah, those are some of the ideas that are discussed. You're quite right, because it costs a company to absorb up to hundreds of thousands of customers from another company that's failed. That costs money, and there may well be a provision for some sort of loan. And that's been discussed, that's been widely reported.
OK, so when will you make decisions on that?
I'm speaking to small suppliers today. I spent the whole weekend speaking to the regulator. I spoke to larger suppliers, and we're getting a round table of smaller suppliers, and we want to get a full range of market opinion.
How have we find ourselves in this position?
I think that there have been extremely volatile commodity prices. Last year, we saw the oil price was at $20 one in April, roughly, and then it went up to 80, and it's come back down a bit. With gas prices this year, we've had, obviously, the COVID pandemic, huge demand coming out of Asia, and that's spiked the price. And that's one of the features of the post-COVID recovery.
Yeah. What about worst-case scenarios? You said yesterday in the House of Commons that it was alarmist to say that people would struggle to heat their homes in the winter months. Yeah,
so my thinking behind that, the reason I've said that, is that there are two issues here. There are gas prices, and then, of course, there's the security of supply, the idea that somehow we won't be able to get enough of the stuff. What I was trying to say yesterday, and what I said yesterday, was that security of supply is not an issue. We've got lots of diverse sources of gas. The structure of the market in terms of the energy suppliers, that is an issue, and that's what we've been talking about.
Well, you say that people won't struggle to heat their homes in the winter months, but of course they do already.
The issue I was saying, in terms of cost, but I'm just saying that there is continuity of supply. That was what I was focusing on. We're mixing up two things here.
Well, not really, because the bottom line is you can either heat your home or you can't.
No, there are reasons why. You can either heat it because it costs a lot of money, or you can't heat it because there simply isn't enough gas. And one of the concerns that was expressed yesterday was that we simply wouldn't have enough of the gas. We wouldn't have enough of the stuff to be able to heat our homes, and that was the misimpression. That was the myth, if you like, I was trying to bust yesterday.
Yeah, but the reason that people can't heat their homes is because they can't afford the gas.
Yes.
And obviously gas prices are going to go up, aren't they? You'll say that there's a price cap, but hundreds of thousands of people are about to come off their fixed-term tariffs, and their prices are going to go up.
So the price cap, as you know, has really kept prices down for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of customers. The gas companies are saying, the energy companies are saying, they want to lift the price cap because they want to raise prices. But I've said that we're keeping the price cap.
Yeah, but my point is that people are coming off their fixed-term tariffs, and as a result, their prices could go up to, did I read something like £1,500 more?
No, I don't recognise that.
So what figures do you recognise?
So I think that what will happen, and we've got to wait and see what happens to the market. We've got to wait and see what happens to the suppliers. But I've said, because of the cap and also in terms of trying to limit rises, we shouldn't be in a situation where people are paying the amount that you said.
So what is the worst case scenario for people who are coming off those fixed term tariffs?
I think that people should be able to find pricing which is very much in line with their old on their old tariff. But as you say, we've got to wait and see how many of the suppliers are affected. Clearly, there's a world of difference if, as is usually the case, 5 to 8 suppliers exit the market, leave, or if it's more than that.
And the figures in the FT yesterday saying, you know, there could be dozens. You don't recognise.
I don't recognise that. I mean, I'm just in terms of background. When I became energy minister more than 2 years ago, there were 65 suppliers. Today, the figure I think is about 55. I need to check that because there were obviously it fluctuates. Do I think that there has to be? Am I going to bail out all 55 of those companies if in an extreme case? No, I don't think we can do that because some of those companies, a handful of them, probably would have exited anyway. So I don't see why we would.
What's the criteria for bailing them out?
Well, we've got to look at their financial position. Some of these companies probably would have exited anyway, and there's no point.
So some of these businesses are just chancers. They like it when it's a sunny day, and when actually they find themselves in a position where they're not making money because of the price cap, then they come cap in hand to the government. Is that what you?
That sometimes happens. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, as I said, every year that I've been in the job, 5 to 8 companies have exited the market for various reasons.
And the Conservative government is not going to bail businesses out like that?
I don't think it makes any sense to put taxpayers' money, your money, our money, to companies that have been badly run.
Are you going to bail out this business that makes carbon dioxide for the food industry but has had to close because it's just not financially viable at the moment?
We're definitely looking at trying to secure carbon dioxide supply. And
what does that look like?
Well, I think we're getting that. I mean, I spoke to the Chancellor yesterday. I've spoken to the CEO of the business, an American man.
CF Industries.
Yep, Tony Will. Spoken to him twice. He flew over on Sunday. I spoke to him on Sunday, lunchtime. We didn't have a lunch, but we spoke very candidly about the situation of his company.
How did that conversation go?
It was a frank conversation. He said that the problem he had was that the natural gas price is much higher than the ammonia which he sells. So essentially what happened last week was that the plant down tools. And I said, of course, we've got to manufacture this CO2, and that's what we're talking about this week.
So we don't have much time as far as that's concerned?
It's pretty imminent, but I'm confident that
today, tomorrow? In
the next this week, I hope we have a very clear plan to get the CO2 production going.
I mean, that's a pretty big deal if he's flying over to have a chat, especially given how challenging it is to fly at the moment. So did you get him to come so you could talk to him?
I didn't. He wanted to come and see us, see me in government. I went to the office. We had a very good conversation about the situation, and we're determined to.
But you made it clear
it.
that we can't not have these factories open.
That's a very clear steer that I gave him.
OK. And you think by the end of the week we'll have that sorted out?
I am very confident and hopeful that we can sort it out by the end of the week.
Isn't it somewhat frustrating that we find ourselves in a position where we're being held to ransom by a business like this? How could we have found ourselves in that position? Why didn't we see it coming?
Well, we have lots of contingency plans. The gas distribution is very wide, but in this particular instance, the manufacture of CO2 was critically dependent on natural gas, where you've got skyrocketing prices. What we've done is we've looked at how we can get the production going again, and I'm hopeful, confident that we'll be able to do that.
Because it is time critical, as you're pointing out. I was reading just yesterday that pig farmers have got all these pigs that need to go to market, chicken farmers as well, and if they're not done by the end of the week, they have to slaughter all these animals and put them in landfill.
You're absolutely right, and that's why the carbon dioxide situation is critical, and that's why I spent all of yesterday.
And what are we going to do about that going forward to make sure that we're not finding ourselves in that position in future?
I think we have to have a diversity of sources of carbon dioxide. CFF isn't the only company that manufactures carbon dioxide.
So why are we so reliant on them?
They have a big share of the market. I said they weren't the only one, but they're a big part of the carbon dioxide market.
And as far as our gas supply is concerned, how concerned are we that the Russians are basically controlling how much gas we get and don't get? I think the levels are down to 20% of pre-pandemic levels.
I don't think that there's much concern, as far as we're concerned, from where we get our gas. Very little of our gas comes from Russia. 50% of it is sourced here in the UK, and 30% comes from Norway. And I spoke to the Norwegian energy minister yesterday, and she was very confident that supply from Norway was secure. They've also said in Norway that they're going to increase production, so they're going to increase capacity as of next week to make sure that we get the gas we need.
We're very reliant on the spot market, though, aren't we? We don't seem to have the storage capability that we had previously. I think there was a place in the North Sea where it closed in 2017. Was it 2017?
2017.
Yeah, and we don't have that big storage facility anymore, which means that we are very susceptible to the ranges in price.
Yeah, you've got to remember, Kay, it's a global...
That's something we should look at.
It's a global... I look at these things all the time. It's a global price spike. So every country, certainly in Europe... I'm
talking particularly about storage. Should we be looking at storage?
I completely understand that, but I'm just trying to put a context.
No, I understand.
This spike is completely unprecedented. We've had a global pandemic. There's a huge uptick in demand, and everyone is trying to get the same sources of gas, and that's what's caused the spike. Now, I think in this situation, you're right. We need to look at our energy strategy going forward. I think it's been fairly resilient. If you look at renewables, if you look at the range of sources of our electricity, it's pretty wide, much wider than a number of other countries. And that's something that is a credit to the UK.
One of the other options, I suppose, to keep people's gas bills under control, or fuel bills, is to pause the green levy. Is that something you might think about?
No, I haven't. I mean, you'll appreciate also that that's an issue for the Chancellor, because it's a fiscal tax.
Yeah, but you can speak to him.
Yeah, I do speak to him a lot. But I think the green levy is pretty much in its infancy. And actually, we've been very successful at moving away from fossil fuels to renewable sources of power, and that's a British success story.
I don't know if we have a climate show here on Sky News that we run.
I've been on it a couple of times.
Yeah, 6:30 every evening, and we have sort of like a projection of how much fuel is being used every single day and every single minute. At the moment, we're using a lot of fossil fuels. That makes the price a bit more concerning, doesn't it? Just looking at it, actually, as we see, 57%. That's significantly higher than what it normally is.
Yeah, that's in terms of gas. You'll know that in that the coal figure has gone down hugely. So even just 8 years ago, we had 40% was from coal burning, essentially, and today that's about 2%. So we've done a good job in moving away from coal, but you're right that natural gas is still a big part of the energy supply.
OK, not something that we can worry about just at the moment. We need to try and make sure that we get the supply as best we can. I wonder if I can talk to you about this MOD data breach before I let you go. What can you tell us about this data breach regarding Afghan interpreters? That is very concerning.
It's very concerning. And as far as I know, I do know, the Secretary of State for Defence has launched an inquiry into this. Clearly, that's something that is deeply worrying. I think it will cause a lot of concern, certainly with allies and interpreters and friends in Afghanistan. And I hope we can get to the bottom of it. That's all I can say about this.
OK. Are you worried that lives could be at risk as a result?
Well, look, I think it's very difficult when people, data is breached and people know what others have been doing. But let's get to the bottom of the investigation.
So that's a yes, really.
No, I just want to say that I think it's a serious situation.
Just before I let you go, just reassure my viewers, if you would, this morning. I mean, you sat in a relaxed fashion, you're very calm, very levelled voice, but a lot of people will be worried about heating their homes and putting food on the table over the next few weeks.
I think the next few days are going to be quite challenging, but I'm very confident.
You said critical and then stopped.
No, I said they're quite challenging. Don't put words into my mouth.
No, I'm asking you. It wasn't a statement.
But I've been in post. I've been energy minister for more than 2 years now. I've been Secretary of State now for nearly a year. I've spoken to many of the major players. I've spoken to the regulator, and I'm very confident that we'll be able to get through this, and we'll look back and say that we did a good job in terms of getting through what was a global situation. It was a difficult global situation, and I think in the UK we'll be able to navigate our way through it.
And what can we do as end-of-the-line users? What can we do to try to help in the meantime?
I think people need to look at their gas prices, and they need to look at what else is out there potentially in the market. I think people need to be aware that there are lots and lots of suppliers, and they are varying quality. Like in any market where you've got 50 or 60 different suppliers, they're not all up to the same level. Some of them are well capitalised, well run, others are less so. And I think consumers probably need to take a little bit more of an active interest. I don't think we should try and all be gas experts, but just in terms of energy bills, just to see what's out there.
Is this the biggest challenge you faced in your
Faced
2
a
years?
number of
in your 2 years this year.
There was an energy blackout 2 weeks into the job, and commuters will remember, I think 1 million commuters were essentially blacked out. There was no electricity, the trains weren't moving. That was in August 2019. We had a whole issue with fracking, and 2.9 on the Richter scale. So in an energy brief,
How does this compare?
This is very serious, and also it's got a global dimension to it in a way that some of those other crises didn't. But it's a very volatile market. There's a lot going on in the global economy. You mentioned Russia. There's geopolitics. There's so many different strands, so many different forces acting on this market, and it's a challenging and stimulating job that I do.